welcome to this wonderful serendipity of a podcast with a seeker friend called Manoj Khatri. Welcome, Manoj, to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
Mm, so, yesterday we were both speaking about a lot of things, random things, and one of the things that struck me was a topic that is not spoken much about. And the topic is how to keep seeking your truth in a world that demands a lot out of us. And while I was setting up, I had this lovely thought that we shall call this episode Lost and Found. So it is a random contemplation, but so very quickly, one of the things that is getting into me at this point, there are times when I think I have understood all there is to. There is this underlying wisdom that kind of connects everything that is happening, good, bad, ugly, everything. And then there are times when my smaller self worries about where the next buck is coming from, or some job that is not done, or some responsibility that is not fulfilled. Does that
Right.
does that also happen to you? And how do you negotiate this ups and downs of quote unquote the seeking life? I can't claim that we are seekers in the truest sense, but at least mildly we are trying to find out truths for ourselves.
Yeah, I think it happens frequently with me also. Um, you know, I always feel that we are at some level living parallel lives. Like there are two of us. Like there's two of me at all times. So there's and one of this personality or whatever you call it kind of becomes dominant at certain times, and the other becomes dormant. And I don't like that fact that this dichotomy exists within me.
Hmm.
But it is a fact. It is a fact that I go through these cycles where, I'm in complete surrender, and I am able to look at everything from a very accepting sort of lens. And I'm in awe of everything. I'm wondering about, everything, the good, the bad, the evil, everything. Until something that sort of jolts me out of it, and then I'm back to facing reality and getting irritated and frustrated, and then all of those things which were earlier kind of making me curious about how the world works suddenly irritates me. you know Angers me, causes creates a lot of frustration. It's almost like reminding it's come to remind me that I'm just human and that there's a long way to go, and I have to there's so much work that I still need to do on myself. uh, Incidentally, when I'm in the flow, which is what I'll call that state, where I'm in a sort of acceptance mode, uh, i I somehow kind of don't think about doing any work on me, because I am accepting of even my own flaws. So I look at everything as, like a whole big tapestry where everything is just fine, and all my flaws and all my weaknesses, all my desires, which so-called, kind of keep me, bound to this world. Uh,
Hmm.
all of those are kind of like, okay, they're fine. I'm accepting of those. But then there are times when I'm like, I'm completely in the state of uh, agitation. And when I'm in that state, that's when I have to kind of remind myself that, oh, all right, you know, this doesn't seem to be what I am or who I am.
Okay.
Uh, but there is no, I don't have real answers really, to be honest. I mean, I've been through uh, extremely wonderful flow states where everything is just so perfect. It seems beautiful. I experience it, I feel it, I see it. I have I'm at peace with all the questions. I'm at peace with all the self doubt that I have. Everything is fantastic. uh, and then when I'm out of it, of course, I'm like, I'm just out of it. And that time it's, I don't think of myself as a seeker or anything for that matter. I'm basically, there's a lot of self-condemnation. And because there's self-condemnation, I think there's also a lot of condemnation about the world and how I see it and, everybody around me. So I guess it's an ebb and
Hmm.
flow and keeps sort of happening.
Do you laugh at yourself?
When I'm in the flow state, I'm always laughing at myself. I'm laughing at everything, actually.
Hmm.
uh, but not when I'm in the agitative state, or when
Hmm.
I'm not really at peace with myself. Then I'm not really laughing much at myself. Uh,
Um,
I'm taking myself too seriously in those times. Um, I am trying to work on myself at that time and trying to make myself better, which is again, it's a
Counterproductive.
paradox, because when I'm actually in the flow state, I don't think that I need to work on myself. So it's only when I'm agitated that I think I need to work on myself. So that I'm not accepting of everything. So there's that awareness probably somewhere, that, oh, this is not who I am. It's more like it's in the background, and it's kind of it's whispering to me that, listen, what are you doing? Why are you in this kind of state? Why is it that you are so angry at yourself or others? Why are you so, distressed about things? It's a whisper, and I know it's there, but I'm like ignoring it. It's like, please go away. I want to be in this state.
Oh, this is very interesting because I don't know, it was yesterday or today, I don't know. This thought came to me. When one is agitated, one seems to be in love with the state of agitation also. That whole sense of, look, I am so powerfully agitated or whatever. I don't know what the feeling is. But it just struck me the other time, I don't want a solution. I just want to be angry right now, or I want to be frustrated. Uh, so that's interesting. The question that was arising in my mind right now, uh, is there this whisper that you have in your consciousness? Does it help you at times to reduce the intensity of whatever emotion that you're expressing or feeling at that moment? And how and when does that happen? Because that whispering is it's a good terminology to use, whisper, because it's very, very subtle and almost non-existent. So, and you are angry and in your full avatar right now, Rudra, Rodra, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
You're ready to burst upon the world and get things right and do something and let's go for it, kind of thing. So how does that whisper work, and does it work at
So,
all?
so because it's a whisper, it doesn't assert itself. It's not insisting that that I listen to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So therefore, I'm not. So very often the whisper happens, and I ignore it, and I remain in that state until that energy kind of starts to die down. That agitation, whatever happened, and then after that, I kind of go back to remembering that whisper, saying, "Oh, that I knew this is not who I am, and this is useless, what I'm going through, or the agitation is not." So I may not. So then I go back to my, my counseling training and say, all right, I may. So there's this very basic concept in the cognitive behavioral therapy where we say there's something called demandingness, which is at the root of all erroneous beliefs that we have, and the erroneous beliefs are what causes unhappiness in us. So demandingness is something that we insist that this thing should be in this certain way, and if they're not, then it's awful, or if it's terrible, or whatever else. So I kind of go back to that and remind myself that, all right, uh, uh, I was in that state of demandingness at that time,
Okay.
and then I reduce that or lower that into a state of preference. So it's not like I become completely fine and I'm like absolutely in a state of acceptance suddenly. No, it doesn't happen. I then use my rational mind to say, all right, things are not the way I expect them to be. The world is not the way I expect it to be. But it's not awful in the sense that I would prefer it to be this way, but if it's not, it's all right.
Okay.
So
This is an interesting question I have, since this initiative is called the Values Workshop, and also it kind of connects to the questions that we've been dealing with so far. Uh, one of the greatest monks of our age in the 20th century, Ajahn Chah, somewhere has said that it is only when defilements arise that we are unhappy.
Defilements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When defilements arise in the mind, we are unhappy. Otherwise, we would be happy. And I find it very interesting because,
Yes.
so now I will call your whisperer the observer, or rather the earlier practices that have given you a distant mate who can look at you and kind of
Yeah.
observe what is happening. So I find very often the more one practices, whatever one practices with genuine honesty, it need not be
Yeah.
this or that. It can be anything that you prefer, but practice it. Uh, the times of practice obviously are good because you're sitting on the cushion and there's nothing happening. So there it is easy to remind oneself that, oh, it is you who's causing it because it is arising in your mind and you're just sitting here, and there can be, you can create certain circumstances that you're doing this while you're sweating and you've not put on the fan, and but that only lasts for a little bit.
Yeah.
The agitation is what is being watched. Um, so these
Right.
periods of introspection, concentration, meditation, wisdom, I use these words very loosely. They are not what they mean in the traditional sense. Obviously, there is more depth to each one of them. But I'm just calling these states of being that we have on a cushion or in our practice. It
Right.
just arises and gives you certain amount of wisdom. And when you are faced with this agitative states and uh, confrontation with yourself and the world and whatever is happening at a time which is unpleasant, some part of you arises, and this whispering happens only when you've been practicing. It cannot happen by itself. You have to keep on practicing when the times are okay, at least, even if they are not good. But you have decided that this is the time that you're sitting to observe what is happening, or it's a it's a calm state of mind, not necessarily pleasant. Sometimes it may be pleasant, but not the exciting kind of pleasant. It is just there. And you're
True.
watching, you're understanding, certain insights arise. It's not your rational mind at work because you're not putting two and two and bringing it to four. Because
Yeah.
those thoughts strike you and you suddenly realize, oh, this is how I work and this is why I get agitated. Oh, so you watch.
Hmm.
Again,
Right.
without judgment, that is another state of mind that you have to bring up. But I'm saying these are things that happen. So, do you think there is a way to get into acceptance mode even when you are in the throes of something very strong as an emotion or a feeling? And has it happened to you? Is there any example you can share when you were surprised by your own wisdom, which is what happens to me? I don't, you can't
So
plan for
yes,
it.
yes, but somehow I feel that uh, I'm not in. So I can't summon it. That state of it.
Absolutely.
So
But I'm
so
saying
it
surprise.
happens. Yeah. So there are times when things have happened, and I have been surprised, and people around me have been surprised that I have reacted very, very calmly, where I would have otherwise, they would have expected me to,
Blast out.
be quite upset about something. And especially where there's a monetary loss, in business, and somebody else is responsible. And I'm like, I've taken it in stride and looked at things, and I say, all right, this happens, it's okay. And when those things, but once again, it's something that I don't know. I don't think I can summon that. It's best, credited to grace, because it just happens sometimes.
Yeah,
And
the
you may say that it's due to practice, but
ah,
again, the practice itself isn't something that I restrict to the cushion, or to the meditation chair, or to
which
that.
is fine,
The practice is something that has happening even when I'm not actually formally meditating or sitting.
which is fine,
But I'm just contemplating, and the contemplation is not an active contemplation. So it's not like I'm analyzing, like you said, observing. So my observer hat suddenly kind of comes on, and again, something, and I'm looking at things, and I think that's where I developed that, if you want to call it that, the muscle of acceptance, because ultimately I feel like, it is a muscle that gets built over time. It's something that you keep doing, and you realize that it's actually a wonderful thing, and the more you do it, the more you like it. And um, so when in the beginning it wasn't easy,
Yeah.
because you are going against your nature, nature in the sense, the upbringing, the way we are all programmed,
Conditioning.
the condition to to behave, to react. And then we are moving and switching from reacting to responding. And then at some point, we are moving from responding to just being. So we are no longer responding either. We are like, okay, I mean, there is no need for me to actually respond. So the first step is to learn from, to stop reacting and to look at how we can respond, to bring that gap, to bring that space between, the event and us, whatever, the trigger and us. That is a difficult part. The acceptance part is something that, you like I said, you kind of it just begins to happen. And then when that happens over time, it happens uh, with greater regularity, I would say. But again, it's not like you can decide to be accepting. That's something that at least I haven't seen that happening so far with me.
Okay, there is
Because
this.
often, I don't know if it happens with you, but often what happens is, like, I know I'm going to get into some sort of a confrontational situation with somebody, and I'm like, I'm going to be very calm, and I'm going to be, very observant, and I'm going to be a witness. But when I actually it never happens.
I completely
So
con.
the reptilian sort of brain takes over, and I become assertive, I become, forceful. And then I'm surprised at myself, that what happened to that guy who was so wise just a few moments ago? Where is that guy? So,
Yes.
so that dichotomy is always there, and that's funny. I mean, you're living with it all the time.
Yeah. Seems like schizophrenia of a certain kind, of a spiritual
It
kind.
kind of feels like that sometimes.
Um, you are actually answering the questions before I ask them, and then I move on to the next question, and their next line covers the next question, and I'm like, okay, what do I ask? So one of the things, observations that I've had, uh, unlike other decisions that one has to take in life,
Hmm.
which are very depleting in nature, the bit kind of depletes uh, your energies, if I were to call them that.
Yeah.
This fight is not a depletion of sorts. Uh, of course, there is vehemence in our reactions, and there is studying, and then for a while the judgment gets passed even before we know. Okay, you are not a good guy. What are you bothered about? And why are you doing this? But overall, as the journey progresses, you come to peace with this dichotomy also. This acceptance of, okay, there will be moments where you will be out of control, and and it doesn't bother you. Like you're not. There was this movie called Sadhu or Shaitan or something like that when we were growing up.
Okay.
So you realize that both the devil and the angelic energies within us can arise at any point, and you got to make your peace with it, because even that is a passing phenomenon, and this passing has to be understood in some manner. uh, I have always been overawed by the Buddha story in so many ways, but one of the things that has struck me very, very strongly is, here is a guy who had it all, and literally he had it all. You name it and
Yeah.
he had it. Why would he be unhappy? Like, what would trouble him? I'm saying it's a nice story to hear that he saw those four omens and he walked towards that. And yes, it may have been shocking, and I appreciate obviously that those are, uh, for somebody who's not seen dukkha of any kind, it is a big one.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, but he was already moving in a direction of some kind of introspection is what I seem to see sometimes. It's not that the like all of us see those omens, yeah. None of us become the Buddha very fast. And neither are we
I
interested.
think somewhere I think the answer is in the question, in the sense that because he had everything already, he
Hmm.
was moved by all of those things. Whereas because we probably, you can say, don't have everything, we still want those desires to be uh,
Fulfilled.
met. We want to fulfill our desires. We have things that we feel, oh, there's still some juice left, for us to get from this world. And so we are looking for all of that. That often happens. I discuss with, I mean, again, it's pure conjecture, but I see a lot of people who, like, celebrities, people who were born to families, let's say in a Hollywood family where, both the parents are successful actors, and then they have a son or a daughter who has everything. They're like beautiful, they have the fame already, they have
Hmm.
all the money, and by the age of 16, 18, the camera is following them, and they're written about in all the newspapers and tabloids. Everybody wants to know what they're doing, where they're going, what they're eating, who their friends are. And then you come to know that, oh, they got into rehab because they've got into drugs. So what is it that happens? Probably because there's no challenge, there's nothing to challenge them. So you have two paths. Then I feel, the path that, because you're so confused and you don't have anything else, oh, let me find excitement in some other form, because whatever other excitement I could have found, I can't, because there's nothing for me to, there's ambition doesn't drive me anymore, which is what will drive most of us, but it doesn't drive them. So then they look for excitement in probably, substances and experiences and stuff like that. And then the other path is the path of the Buddha, where, he's like, all right, I have everything, but this doesn't seem to satisfy me. It seems like, I still feel empty. Everything seems so temporary. I have a sensual experience, but it kind of lasts for a few minutes or a few seconds or whatever. And then I feel empty. I have any kind of experience of, and it lasts for a few seconds. And after that, I feel, okay, what more? And so then probably he came to that, like you said, introspection, because he had experienced all of that. Now, the other stories, around it, that, oh, he was born divine and stuff like that, I'm not too sure of that. But I know that this seems more plausible, that he had a princely life, he had everything. And therefore, and he saw that even all of those pleasures, all of those comforts, all of those luxuries were not enough to keep him in a state of peace, joy, happiness at all times. And perhaps that's because most of us are taught that happiness is equal to pleasure, or pleasure is equal to happiness. And so we're looking for happiness in experiences. We are looking for happiness in, in something outside of ourselves. And and I think that's what he probably realized. And again, it's
Conjuncture.
just something that yeah, it's a conjecture.
Uh, you used a very interesting word, satisfaction.
Hmm.
Uh, what makes you satisfied? And there can be layers to your answer. The earlier version of you, whatever is
I
working for you
feel
now.
very Yeah, I feel very content when I'm in a state of um, not wanting. It's a funny thing. This is what satisfies me the most. Not not needing anything else to be satisfied. In the sense that and there are times when I am in that state where I'm like at perfect harmony and peace with everything. Uh, it doesn't happen too often, but whenever it happens, it's the most blissful time when I'm not in a state of wanting anything. I'm at peace with everything that is, you know, the world inside me, the world outside me, everything.
Uh, is this also unsummonable?
Uh, yes, to some extent, sometimes uh, you can kind of, like, when the circumstances are a little bit favorable, and but you're not in that state, you can kind of ease your way into it more, like, uh, it's easier to get into it. But by and large, yes, I think, you can't really, at least I feel so far I have not been able to. So I don't know whether there is a state or there are people who are able to summon it at will. And if they could summon it at will, then why would they ever get out of it? I feel, in the sense that they would probably perpetually be in that state. Because why would I want to ever be in a state that's not blissful, if I am able to be blissful? I mean, at will.
Okay, I'll try to make it quick because it's a longer story. But so there was this king who was a follower of the Buddha. He had a friend,
Mhm.
and the friend
Okay.
sent him, who was also a king, and he sent him some expensive gift. And at some
Okay.
point, now there was this reciprocation, need to reciprocate with an equally wonderful gift. And the guy realized that he had nothing better than the Buddha and his wisdom as a gift, because how do
Yeah.
you tell the other person? So he writes something, and there's a longish story. He writes it 15 days, he writes, he purifies himself, and all those things are there. And
Right.
this guy and asks him to see it alone. So when he sees it and he just reads the first line and he says, the Buddha, there is a Buddha in the world. And that guy is, matlab, he just faints. Matlab, these guys have good parmis, good merits. And effectively, the last line says, you should become a monk. Nothing else is worth it in the world. So now this guy, in respect of the Buddha story, starts to walk. He's never walked in his life. He's a king. So his feet
Okay.
are hurting and bleeding, and the
Hmm.
Buddha, apparently the Buddha takes birth to help people who are just on the verge of breaking through.
Right.
And Buddha sees this is about to happen, and that guy has gone ahead and whatever. And Buddha needs to reach there so that he reaches in time and helps him. But out of respect of, like, he, out of respect of Buddha's journey, started to walk instead of
Okay.
taking, hitching a ride or taking a chariot.
Hmm.
Buddha in his way respects his journey by walking instead of using his supernormal powers. So
Okay.
this has always touched me, that here is a guy who's willing to uh, be human about it, because it's such a human thing to be compassionate, feel for somebody else, and
Yes.
respect somebody else's journey. Um, so maybe that is one of the reasons why they come back from that blissful state, so that they can actually show us the path of acceptance of everything as it is. Like a Buddha need not trouble himself by walking, for example. I'm just saying.
Hmm.
He has
Hmm.
the miracle of flying from one place to another because of his supernormal powers. So this is obviously conjecture. I cannot fly for now, except if I take a proper airplane ticket and all. But one of the things I realize is there is a sense of letting go always. All kinds of wisdom, all kinds of merits, all kinds of quote unquote goodness. Like, I don't want to, bind myself by saying right things, wrong thing, good and this. But any kind of goodness which is beneficial to me and beneficial to others, I tend to let go of something. And the moment I let
Okay.
go, there is this sense of ease, and these kind of states become more normal. The ones that you spoke of, contentment, and no need to summon them, because it's for a, you stop fighting something. I also
Right.
find the word used by for the monks is arhant, which is harmless to everyone. I find it
Hmm.
very interesting that a word like that would be chosen. Is you really stop fighting, because anybody can be harmful to anybody else only when they bring up those states of animosity within themselves.
Right.
But when
Hmm.
there is none, then why would I? Like, you and I connect after months very often. It
Yeah.
might be just one WhatsApp message or none at all. But it does not seem there is no need to. There is no need to
Sure.
converse. There is no need to. In fact, sometimes when we converse about things which are not needed, you feel there was no need at all. Why bother using words? So it is not that I like you less or you like me less or any such thing. It is just the feeling of let things be. So you, what do you have to say to something like that? Because we are discussing a state that is beyond us, but certain inklings of what might uh, be triggered within us in terms of state of being.
Yeah, I think kind of you're talking about a state of being in some sort of non-resistance, to everything, and being able to let go. And I think when we are talking about uh, the state of flow that I mentioned, or the state of bliss that I mentioned, uh, it happens. But again, the letting go also, for some strange reason, I feel I cannot actually kind of take credit for it. It's like I
Yeah, yeah,
we talk, so the restriction of language, so we say I let go, but the very fact that that whole sense of I dissolves for that moment, and that is why the letting go happens, because there
yeah.
isn't me in the conventional sense. There isn't in this, like what we think of as me, what I think of as I. All the labels, all the beliefs, the values, the ideas, everything that I have, that has kind of come together to form this thing called I, that dissolves. When that dissolves, everything as dissolves with it, until then it sort of resurrects after some time, and then again those things come. So the letting go is something that again happens, and somehow at that point in time, the understanding of what's happening, magically, by some way, we begin to
Falls in
see
place.
everything in that. Yeah, it just happens. So we everything falls in place. The whole it's like there are no questions anymore. That's a very rare thing. There are no questions anymore.
True.
And so it's often very difficult to describe that, because when there are no questions.
I have
And
a question here.
I thrive, to be honest, I thrive on questions, because that's what makes me feel that, okay, that is one of the things that has kind of brought me where I am today, in terms of questioning everything, questioning all my beliefs and values, questioning my understanding of so many things. I have, so I kind of like that. But then there are times when I go through this period where there are absolutely no questions. And because there is no sense of I, and all letting go happens by itself. So to say that I let go also it
Is a
somehow feels
is
a
a
bit
misnomer.
pretentious, because if
It
I
is.
could let go, I would do it at will whenever I wanted to. But I know I can't. That's a funny thing, because that realization is
Okay.
there, that I am somehow not able to do it at will. So the question probably is it possible for me to be, you know,
Preempt the
be able
let
to
go part.
not identify myself with this I? Therefore, there is no this sense of self. Because I think people like the Buddha, or people who are, so-called enlightened people, I think that is the whole idea, that the sense of I isn't there.
Dissolves completely.
Yes. Right. There is this very nice quote that I had read. I don't remember who had said it, but he had said something very nice. I'll have to sort of paraphrase because I can't remember exactly. But it said that the um, ego thinks that it will be there to enjoy the fruits of enlightenment. Something like that,
Must be Ramdas for sure.
It's something like that, something of that sort. And I thought, that makes so much sense, because the very idea of ego, or the very idea of that I, you know,
Yeah.
itself is what is causing all of this.
Conflict.
So but the moment that I is out of the equation, the whole thing collapses.
That's a lovely
So
term. Collapses is a lovely term. So
yeah,
I do have a question.
yeah,
Initially, when one begins the journey, because whatever my past record makes a lot of people call me and with their problems, and very often we have these kind of discussions that they don't have with other people because these kind of discussions are not really mainstream.
Right.
They also come from various, uh, Ramzu would call it levels of misunderstanding. But I would think it various areas of thought processes and what they identify with, and they want to know the answer and get out of problems. There
Mm-hmm.
are problems that they've come to solve. And very often, when I say that, look, you cannot resolve anything really, it dissolves when it dissolves. You
Mm.
cannot really bring it up. But there is a discipline to it, is what I see initially. When you're, see, the identification itself is a big uh, habit pattern.
Yes.
I identify myself as Bunty and I dress like this and I do
Yes.
podcasting and I'm a writer and I do whatever it is that I do.
Yeah.
I'm eating, I'm dying, I'm living, I'm doing whatever.
Yeah.
The identification has to be, one needs to learn to distance initially at least, because that it's a paradigm that you are preparing yourself for, not necessarily successfully or not. That could be debated obviously, but the idea is that the intent is to go beyond what is being seen, or superficial truths is what I would like to think. uh,
Mm-hmm.
of course you can come back to me and say "Ki the all this, one of my favorite ideas is that all the saints in the world are poor people." So from Jesus to uh, Ravidas to Nanak to Kabir, and to almost all of them have had
Or someone like Buddha who chooses to be poor.
to be harm, but it is more the mainstream. So they don't really identify themselves with these things. But I find that initial work needs to be done. You need to want to be something at least, because it may be a wrong track, but it is a necessary intent for you to start working in some direction. So if I want to, as a parallel, if I want to go to Delhi, I need to decide that I want to go to Delhi. Even if I do not decide whether I want to fly or go by train or walking or by bullock cart or whatsoever, those things will come. The way opens for somebody who is at least looking for the way. Because because a lot of people do have this discussion. What about, so where is the effort? But it is just the beginning of the whole exercise. You realize that it is a gateless gate, effortless effort. Those things keep happening. And now that I'm discussing this with you, I think even that is somehow out of our control, because the seeking arises on its own very often, that you are suddenly thinking, no, I want to see, I want to know beyond what is this,
Mm.
the nature of things. I want to go find out something. It may start with an I, uh, and initial part is very, very difficult. And the things that we started this discussion with, the anger, the frustration, and the inability to comprehend what is happening to us, very often all of those things happen together. uh, but the journey needs work. I do not know how it works though. So what do you have to say to that?
I So I think if somebody comes to me for with a problem, and if he or she is expecting me to offer some kind of a spiritual sort of solution, I generally don't sort of entertain that much, because I feel that a spiritual solution cannot be
Somebody
offered in a
else's.
fragmented sort of way, in the sense that if you want a certain problem to be solved, it cannot be solved. The problem will solve itself when you, like you said, start walking the path and say, this is, what I know I don't want to be. There is no way to actually think about what I want to be, because that the mind is coming in, then it's more
Yeah.
like a predefined thing that I want to be, and that's a mind game.
Yeah.
So I don't know what I want to be, but I do know that there are things that I don't want, you know
Hmm.
which is where I found Ramana Maharishi's approach very it resonated, because he says neti neti, in the sense that just keep saying not this, not this, because I'm looking at myself and said, this isn't what, this part is something that it doesn't really agree with me, but I'm still holding on to it. So I keep removing all of that. But then I know that this is a path that I want to walk on. If somebody is willing to walk on that path, you say you can't just remove one. You keep, that's a process that will be ongoing. And it may be surprising, but like you said, there's so many self discoveries that happen. Again, if the word self discovery is wrong in the sense that there's no self, but you come to know that there are so many of these things which don't make sense. And why is it that I have embraced them? Why is it that I have, why do I believe in these ideas? Why do I believe in, these concepts? And is there any absolutely any use for any of it? And I'm not questioning the truth of it. I'm not questioning whether this is true or not. I'm saying even if it's true, it's not important. Is it really, does it add to anything?
Me.
Because yeah, because it's not, we are not looking for that. Like you said, I think before we started, you I think quoted somebody, I forget.
Mm.
I think you quoted Khalil Gibran
Mm.
about finding. You
The
don't say that you found the truth. That you say that you found a truth,
Yeah,
right? It's kind of like that. You find what is it one thing that you realize, that this isn't, and that also is kind of like a truth, because it's like, oh, it's a revelation. I didn't know that this was not, necessary for my this I to exist. So I'm kind of uh, you know making my that I lightweight. That's all I can do. So if somebody comes to me with a problem, I would prefer to offer them a rational solution, you know, and then at the same time, kind of give them hints that if you want to walk the spiritual path, again, the word spiritual is something, it's too
yeah,
loaded. So I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
like to use it, but for lack of a better term, you want to walk on the path of self-awareness or whatever else you call it, consciousness. All these words are loaded. Then this is how you do it. You begin to see and constantly look at yourself. Use whatever mindfulness, mindful awareness, whatever else you want to call it, but be aware and question. See if you can question everything, because that's what will help you. Because when you question everything, you question your own uh,
Sense of the world.
worldview about yourself, your inner world, what you believe, your convictions, and all that, and the rest of the world. And often, you begin to see that, oh, this doesn't matter really, and this is so futile. And then you question everything and say, where did all of this come from, and when did we make this? I mean, almost everything turns out to be fictional.
Yeah,
But the fiction is got such momentum from generations and decades, and some of them centuries.
yeah, yeah.
They've just sort of been passing through generations, so we have also inherited. So it's just those that we need to question. Some of those are difficult too, because suddenly it's like, okay, I'm going to be completely in a world that's alien, because everybody else around me will continue to believe that and I will not.
I know. I was thinking about the fear part here, because I was discussing with someone, and there is this new service I've started, where I'm helping people through Zoom calls. So I was talking to this friend, and she had a problem,
Mhm.
and she said, "So, are you able to give it all up?" I said, "I know I have not reached the final part of giving all up, because it makes me fearful. The final point, whatever it is, little truths I'm happy with for now, but just that whole jump into full surrender to the process, or the understanding hasn't happened, because I can see the fear arising. What happens if I'm not uh, there to experience it, like the example you gave. In fact, funnily enough, I was thinking of one of Abida Parveen's songs, in which she's uh, quotes Amir Khusro, इसी तलाश व
Okay.
तजस्सुस में खो गया हूं मैं, जो मैं नहीं हूं तो क्यों हूं, जो हूं तो क्या हूं मैं. So तलाश व
Nice.
तजस्सुस is this confused seeking.
Hmm.
So who am I? And if I'm not there, then what am I? And
What am I? Yes. Hmm.
and it kind of is a scary place to be. What I like about our discussion today is that we may have started with saying it is lost and found, and we end with a part that is still as lost as we began. But it is a good feeling to have no answers
Yeah.
and be comfortable with the questions. Uh,
Yes.
Things arise when they do, and it is
Yeah.
the miracle of life, universe, God, whatever nature, whatever you want to call it, is very
Mm.
benevolent. Uh, all asked and unasked questions are answered, and they are so definitively answered that the questions don't stay. At least in my case. Uh,
True.
Thank you so much for this wonderful discussion. It was impromptu, and I
Yeah.
I think I'll have to go through this again once to have a look at what all we discussed then, because we've covered a lot of ground, a lot of stuff that is not easy to comprehend in the first half an hour of it itself. But we've tried.
Yeah. True. I
I
agree.
hope somebody benefits somewhere from this conversation.
Yeah, I hope it is difficult. It is, there are things that we are trying to, put in words that are really actually, even we find it difficult because they don't really fall in that structured,
Train of
understanding
thought.
that we all have, that fits in language. So yeah, but yeah, it was really nice. I mean, a pleasure to,
Mhm.
have these kind of discussions with you. It's always
Sure.
nice. Um,
I shall
so
see you
until
soon.
next time, yeah,
Thank you.
bye bye.
Bye.